I was lying in the hospital bed when my phone rang. The morphine was still making everything feel slightly unreal, like I was watching my life through a fog. My hands were shaking as I reached for it, not from the pain, though there was plenty of that, but from something else. A feeling I couldn't quite name yet. Mom? How did it go? Jason's voice sounded distracted, like he was multitasking. I could hear Dylan in the background, my sweet 5-year-old grandson, asking for juice. The surgery went well, I said, my voice still hoarse from the breathing tube. Dr. Patterson said it was more complicated than they thought. The hernia was larger, and there was some muscle damage they had to repair. Oh, that's good. I mean, good that they fixed it. A pause. So when can you come home? I smiled despite the ache in my abdomen. Even now, after everything, I wanted to believe he was asking because he cared. Because he was worried about his mother lying alone in a hospital bed, the same woman who had sat by his bedside through every childhood illness, every broken bone, every nightmare. Tomorrow morning, if everything looks good overnight, I said. But Jason, Dr. Patterson was very clear about the recovery. 4 to 6 weeks of complete rest. No lifting anything over 5 pounds. No cooking, no cleaning, no wait, what? His voice sharpened. 6 weeks? Mom, that's a really long time. Something cold settled in my stomach, and it had nothing to do with the surgery. It's not optional, honey. The doctor said if I don't follow the restrictions, I could have serious complications. The mesh they put in needs time to heal properly, and if I tear it, Mom, we talked about this. You said it was a simple procedure. In and out, back to normal in a couple weeks. Had I said that? I tried to remember our conversation from 3 weeks ago when I'd first told him about the surgery date. I'd been so focused on reassuring him, on not being a burden, that maybe I had downplayed it. That was what I did, wasn't it? Made everything seem easier, lighter, less of an imposition. I thought it would be, I admitted, but it wasn't. And now I need to follow doctor's orders. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Jason? Mom, this is really bad timing. His voice had changed. It was the voice he used with difficult clients, professional and distant. Brittany just got promoted. She's managing the entire regional team now. And Dylan's preschool has that weird schedule where he's only there 3 days a week. We were counting on you, counting on me. Those 3 words echoed in my head as I lay there, staples holding my abdomen together, my body screaming for rest. I'll only be out for a month, maybe 6 weeks at most, I said, hearing the apology already creeping into my voice. Why was I apologizing? After that, I'll be back to helping with Dylan, I promise. A month? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, do you have any idea how much daycare costs? And Brittany can't take time off right now. This promotion is huge for us. We're talking about buying a bigger house, maybe even moving to Riverside Estates. Riverside Estates, the gated community with the golf course and the pool. I'd driven by it once, admiring the manicured lawns, imagining what it would be like to live somewhere so beautiful. I'd never imagined my son living there while I recovered from surgery in my small 2-bedroom house on the other side of town, the one that still had the broken dishwasher I couldn't afford to fix. I'm sorry, I whispered, but I can't help right now. Doctor's orders. Another long silence. You know what, Mom? I never thought I'd say this, but you're being selfish. The word hit me like a physical blow. Selfish. Me, Barbara Henderson, who had worked double shifts as a nurse for 23 years to pay for Jason's college, who had taken out a second mortgage to help him and Brittany with their down payment, who had been watching Dylan 4 days a week for the past 3 years, refusing any payment because that's what grandmas do. Selfish. Jason, I just had surgery and I get that, I do. But Mom, this is literally the first time in your life you're choosing yourself over family. Do you know how that feels? We needed you, and you're just checking out. My throat closed up. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him about the 6 years since his father died, the 6 years I'd spent being strong for everyone else. The nights I'd cried myself to sleep because the loneliness was unbearable. The times I'd skipped meals to make sure I could afford birthday presents for Dylan. The physical therapy I'd put off for my back because I needed to save money for their family vacation fund. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I have to go. Dylan needs dinner. We'll talk later." The line went dead. I stared at the ceiling, counting the tiles through my tears. 1, 2, 3, 4. When did I become the kind of mother who had to count ceiling tiles to keep from falling apart? The nurse came in to check my vitals, her smile professional and kind. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Henderson?" "Fine," I lied. "Just fine." But I wasn't fine. As I lay there in that hospital bed, something shifted inside me. Not the surgical mesh that was holding just fine. No, this was something deeper. A tiny crack in the foundation of who I'd always been. The next morning, they discharged me with a folder full of instructions and a prescription for pain medication that would cost me $80 even with insurance. I called Jason to let him know I was ready to be picked up. "Mom, I can't. I have a meeting at 10. Can you take an Uber?" An Uber. From the hospital. After major surgery. "Sure," I said. "No problem." The ride home cost $42. The driver helped me to my front door, his concern more genuine than my own son's had been. I tipped him $20 I couldn't afford and shuffled into my empty house. That's when it hit me the true weight of what Dr. Patterson had said. 4 to 6 weeks of complete rest. No cooking, no cleaning, no lifting, no one to help me. I stood in my living room, looking at the pile of laundry I'd meant to fold before the surgery, the dishes in the sink, the dust gathering on the shelves, and I felt something I'd never allowed myself to feel before. Abandoned. But what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have known as I lowered myself carefully onto my couch, was that this was just the beginning. The phone call that would come 3 days later would change everything. And the discovery I would make 2 weeks after that would shatter the image I'd held of my son for 32 years. Some stories start with a bang. Mine started with a hernia and a phone call. But oh, what a story it would become. The pain medication made everything hazy, but not hazy enough to forget the silence. 3 days since I'd come home from the hospital, and Jason hadn't called once, not to check if I was okay, not to see if I needed anything, not even to apologize for calling me selfish. I'd stopped expecting Brittany to reach out years ago. My daughter-in-law had always been cordial. That was the word I used when people asked about our relationship. Cordial, like we were distant acquaintances forced to interact at the occasional wedding. But Jason? That silence cut deeper than any surgical incision. My best friend, Carol, came by on day 4. She took one look at me, unwashed hair, same pajamas I'd been wearing for 48 hours, empty protein shake bottles littering the coffee table, and her face crumpled. "Barbara, honey, why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to be a burden," I said automatically. The words came out so easily, like they'd been programmed into me decades ago. A burden? "Barbara, you just had surgery." "Where's Jason?" I looked away. "He's busy." Brittany got a promotion. Carol's jaw tightened. She'd never been Jason's biggest fan, not since the Christmas 5 years ago when he'd forgotten to invite me to their family gathering because Brittany's parents were in town and it would be too crowded. I'd spent that Christmas alone, eating leftover turkey from the grocery store deli, telling myself it was fine. "That boy needs a wake-up call," Carol muttered, heading to my kitchen. "When's the last time you had a real meal?" I couldn't remember. The prescription said to take the pain pills with food, but everything seemed like too much effort. Opening the refrigerator, figuring out what to eat, standing long enough to prepare it. I'd been surviving on protein shakes and crackers. Carol spent the next hour cleaning my kitchen, making me a proper meal, and setting up a system, labeled containers with easy-to-reheat soups and casseroles. She made me promise to call her if I needed anything at all. After she left, I felt marginally more human. Fed, clean, with fresh sheets on the bed she'd helped me change, but the house still felt too quiet, too empty. My phone buzzed. Finally, Jason. But it wasn't a text asking how I was. It was a photo of Dylan at the park, grinning on a swing. The message said, "Having so much fun at the new daycare. They have a playground and a splash pad." New daycare. The words stared back at me from the screen. They'd found a daycare. They could afford it after all. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt replaced. Like the 3 years I'd spent being Dylan's primary caregiver had been as disposable as a broken appliance. Old dishwasher breaks? Get a new one. Grandma can't babysit? Find a daycare. I typed and deleted 5 different responses before settling on, "That's wonderful. Give him a kiss for me." Safe, supportive, undemanding, everything a good mother should be. The weekend came and went. Still no call. On Monday morning, I woke up to a voicemail from Brittany. She must have called while I was sleeping off the medication. "Hi, Barbara. So, we're having a little situation. Dylan's daycare is closed for renovations this week, and we were wondering if you could watch him. I know you're recovering, but he's really good at playing quietly. You wouldn't have to do much. Just keep an eye on him. Let us know." I played the message 3 times, listening to the tone. Cheerful, light, as if she were asking me to water their plants, not watch an energetic 5-year-old when I could barely walk to the bathroom without gasping in pain. My fingers hovered over the phone. The old Barbara would have said yes, would have found a way to make it work, even if it meant risking my health. Because that's what good grandmothers do, right? They sacrifice. They put everyone else first. But I thought about Dr. Patterson's stern warning. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm not exaggerating when I say this is serious. If you overexert yourself, you could tear the mesh. That would mean another surgery, more complicated than this one. You need to rest." I typed, "I'm sorry, but I'm not cleared for childcare yet. Doctor's orders. Hope you can find someone else." The exclamation point felt forced, like I was trying too hard to sound cheerful about setting a boundary. Brittany's response came within minutes. "Seriously? He's just one kid. You don't have to lift him or anything. Just one kid." As if Dylan didn't require constant attention, meals, bathroom help, entertainment, discipline. As if being a caregiver was passive, requiring no energy or effort. I didn't respond. For the first time in my life, I simply didn't respond to my daughter-in-law's demand. 2 hours later, Jason called. "Mom, what's going on? Brittany said you're refusing to watch Dylan." Refusing, not unable, not recovering from surgery. Refusing. "Jason, I'm not cleared by my doctor to mom. He's 5 years old. You can sit on the couch while he watches TV. This is really important. Brittany's promotion depends on her being available this week. Do you understand what you're asking us to sacrifice?" What I was asking them to sacrifice. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, there was no dramatic explosion, no shouting match. Instead, it was quiet, like a thread pulling loose from fabric. A small unraveling that would eventually change everything. "I understand," I said calmly. "And I'm saying no." Silence on his end. I never said no to Jason. Not when he wanted to quit piano lessons after I'd saved for 6 months to buy him a keyboard. Not when he'd wrecked my car his senior year and needed money for the deductible. Not when he'd asked me to co-sign his first apartment lease, putting my credit on the line. Never. "Wow," he said finally. "Carol's been in your ear, hasn't she? Filling your head with all this self-care nonsense. You know what, Mom? This isn't you. You're not a selfish person. Or at least, you never used to be." "Maybe," I said, my voice shaking. I should have been. I hung up before he could respond. Then I turned off my phone and cried until the pain medication kicked in and pulled me under. When I woke up 3 hours later, my phone was still off. The silence in the house felt different now. Less lonely, more peaceful. Like for the first time in years, I didn't have to perform for anyone. Didn't have to be the selfless, endlessly giving Barbara Henderson. I could just be, but that peace wouldn't last. Because 2 days later, I would check my mailbox and find something that would make me question everything I thought I knew about my son, about the sacrifices I'd made, about the life I'd built around being needed. Some revelations come slowly, like dawn creeping over the horizon. Others hit you all at once, like a car crash you never saw coming. Mine was waiting in a cream-colored envelope with a return address I didn't recognize. Wednesday afternoon, I finally felt strong enough to walk to the mailbox. It was only 30 feet from my front door, but it might as well have been a mile. Each step sent a sharp reminder through my abdomen that I was still healing, still broken in ways that couldn't be rushed. The mailbox was stuffed full 5 days of accumulation, bills mostly, credit card offers, a grocery store circular, and then, at the bottom, a cream-colored envelope with elegant script addressing it to me. The return address said Patterson and Associates, Estate Planning. My heart skipped. I knew that name, but not from Dr. Patterson at the hospital. This was Martin Patterson, the estate attorney who had handled my late husband Tom's will 6 years ago. Inside the house, I carefully lowered myself onto the couch before opening it. My hands were shaking, though I couldn't say why. Some animal instinct maybe, warning me that what was inside would matter. The letter was brief. Dear Mrs. Henderson, I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing regarding the estate of Thomas Henderson, specifically concerning account number 4477 at First National Bank. As per your late husband's instructions, this account was structured as a payable on death account with you as the primary beneficiary and Jason Henderson as the contingent beneficiary. Our records indicate that you may not be aware of this account's existence, as it was set up 6 months before your husband's passing and was never mentioned in the primary will documents. However, recent banking activity has triggered a requirement for beneficiary verification. The current balance is $127,450. Please contact our office to discuss next steps. I read it 3 times, then 4. The numbers blurred together as tears filled my eyes. $127,450. Tom had left me $127,450, and I'd never known. 6 years. 6 years of struggling to pay the mortgage. 6 years of choosing between fixing the car and fixing the water heater. 6 years of skipping doctor's appointments because the co-pays added up. 6 years of eating ramen and canned soup while I helped Jason and Brittany save for their dream house. And there had been money all along, but that wasn't the part that made my blood run cold. It was the next sentence. Recent banking activity has triggered a requirement for beneficiary verification. Banking activity on an account I didn't know existed. My hands were steadier now as I picked up the phone and called the number on the letterhead. Patterson and Associates, how may I help you? This is Barbara Henderson. I just received a letter about my late husband's estate account. Yes, Mrs. Henderson. Let me transfer you to Mr. Patterson. Martin Patterson's voice was grave when he came on the line. Barbara, I'm glad you called. We need to talk about something concerning the banking activity, I said. Yes, 3 weeks ago, there was an attempted withdrawal from the account. Someone presented themselves at the bank with a death certificate and identification claiming to be the contingent beneficiary, requesting a full account closure and fund transfer. My mouth went dry. Jason. The bank flagged it as suspicious because our office had never processed a primary beneficiary death certificate for you. When they contacted us for verification, we discovered you were very much alive and had never been notified of the account's existence. How? How did Jason even know about it? That's what I've been trying to determine. The account was meant to be revealed to you through our office upon receipt of proper documentation. Your husband's instructions were very clear. This money was for your security, to be used as you saw fit. The contingent beneficiary designation was only meant to take effect if you predeceased him or upon your eventual passing. I closed my eyes, seeing Tom's face. We'd been married for 34 years. He'd been a quiet man, steady, the kind who showed love through actions rather than words. Setting up a secret account to protect me, that was exactly something he would do. Barbara, I need to ask you directly. Did you give Jason permission to access this account? No, I didn't even know it existed until 20 minutes ago. A pause. Then we have a serious problem. What he attempted constitutes fraud. The bank has frozen any further access, but you need to decide how you want to proceed. You could press charges or no, I said quickly. Too quickly. Even now, even after everything, the instinct to protect my son was overwhelming. No charges, but I want to know how he found out about it. I'll do some investigating on my end, Martin said. In the meantime, you should come to the office. There are documents you need to sign to formally claim the account. And Barbara, change your passwords. All of them. If Jason had access to information about this account, he might have access to other things. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. The pain in my abdomen was nothing compared to the pain in my chest. My son, my baby boy, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, had tried to steal from me. Had tried to claim money that was meant to secure my future, my old age, my medical care. And he'd done it while I was in the hospital, recovering from surgery. I thought about the phone call, the way he'd sounded distracted, impatient. Had he already known about the money? Had he been calculating even then how to get his hands on it? The promotion, the bigger house, Riverside Estates. Oh God, my phone's still off since the argument sat on the coffee table like a grenade. I didn't want to turn it on, didn't want to see the messages, the justifications, the excuses. Because if Jason knew I discovered what he'd tried to do, he'd have some explanation. He always did, but I forced myself to power it on. 17 missed calls, 12 from Jason, 5 from Brittany, and a string of text messages that made my stomach turn. Jason, Mom, we need to talk. Call me ASAP. Jason, I know you're mad about the Dylan thing, but this is important. Jason, Mom, seriously, call me back. Brittany, Barbara, there's been some kind of banking mix-up. We need to discuss it before lawyers get involved. Banking mix-up, that's what they were calling it. The next message made my hands shake with rage. Jason, Mom, I know about Dad's account. Before you freak out, let me explain. Dad told me about it before he died. He wanted me to have it to help with Dylan's future. The bank just made a mistake with the paperwork. We can fix this, but you need to call me back. Lies. Tom would never have done that. Every penny he'd saved had been for me, for us, for our future together. He'd made that clear in every conversation we'd ever had about money. And the idea that he'd tell Jason about a secret account but not me, his wife of 34 years? Impossible. I scrolled through more messages, each one more desperate than the last. Brittany, Barbara, please don't make this a legal thing. We're family. We can work this out among ourselves. Jason, you're really going to believe some lawyer over your own son? After everything I've done for you. That last message sent a cold fury through my veins. Everything he'd done for me. Like what exactly? Like allowing me to babysit his child? Like accepting my financial help without ever offering anything in return? Like calling me selfish when I dared to prioritize my own health? There was one more message, sent just an hour ago. Jason, fine, don't respond. But you should know Brittany's pregnant. We were going to tell you this weekend. We needed that money for the new baby's college fund. So congratulations, Mom. You're choosing money over your grandchildren. I stared at that message until the words blurred. Pregnant. Another baby. And somehow, in Jason's twisted logic, my refusal to let him steal from me was choosing money over family. The old Barbara would have felt guilty, would have second-guessed herself, wondering if maybe Tom really had wanted Jason to have the money, would have called Jason back, apologized, offered to split it or give him some. But I wasn't the old Barbara anymore. Surgery had a way of cutting out more than just hernias. It had cut through the illusion I'd been living under for years. I typed one message, "We'll discuss this through lawyers." Then I blocked his number. The silence that followed was terrifying and liberating all at once. For the first time in my adult life, I had put myself first, had drawn a line my son couldn't cross. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because what I didn't know yet, what I wouldn't discover until I went to Martin Patterson's office the following week, was that the account was just the beginning. Tom had left more than money. He'd left a letter, and what it said would explain everything. Martin Patterson's office was in an old brick building downtown, the kind with creaky wooden floors and windows that had witnessed decades of family dramas. I'd been here once before, 6 years ago, numb with grief as we'd gone through Tom's will. Back then, everything had seemed straightforward. The house to me, his life insurance split between me and Jason, his retirement accounts properly designated. Now I wondered what else I'd missed. Martin's secretary, a kind woman named Grace, who I vaguely remembered, offered me tea and helped me into the leather chair across from his desk. The incision was healing, but sitting for too long still sent sharp reminders through my core. "How are you feeling, Barbara?" Martin asked, his eyes concerned. He was in his late 60s, with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen everything and judged nothing. "Like my whole life has been a lie," I said honestly. He nodded, pulling out a thick folder. "I've done some investigating into how Jason discovered the account. It appears that 3 months ago, someone accessed your personal email account and found correspondence between you and myself from 6 years ago, routine estate management emails that mentioned the existence of additional accounts to be discussed. I stopped. 3 months ago, right around when I'd mentioned to Jason that I was having surgery. Right around when he'd offered to help me organize my paperwork and I'd given him my laptop to use for the afternoon because his was being repaired. He hacked my email," I whispered. "I can't prove that legally," Martin said carefully. "But the timeline is suspicious. What I can tell you is this. Your husband was very deliberate about this account. He came to see me 6 months before he died, after his cancer diagnosis. He was very clear that this money was for you, and only you. He made me promise that if anything ever happened, I would make sure you knew about it." "Then why didn't you tell me 6 years ago?" Martin's face fell. "Because I made a terrible mistake. The account information was supposed to be in a sealed envelope, to be given to you 6 months after Tom's death. He wanted you to have time to grieve before dealing with financial matters. But in the chaos of closing his estate, that envelope got misfiled. It wasn't until the bank contacted us about Jason's attempted withdrawal that I discovered the error." He pulled out a cream-colored envelope, identical to the one that had held the letter. My name was written on it in Tom's handwriting, that slightly cramped script I'd recognize anywhere. "This was meant for you 6 years ago," Martin said quietly. "I am deeply sorry." My hands trembled as I took it. The seal was still intact. Inside were 2 pieces of paper, a bank statement showing the account history, and a letter. 3 pages, front and back, in Tom's handwriting. "My dearest Barbara, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I know I promised you we'd have more time, but cancer doesn't care about promises. I'm writing this in Martin's office because I need you to know some things, and I'm too much of a coward to say them to your face. You'd tell me I'm being silly, that we don't need to talk about such morbid things. You'd make me tea and change the subject, and I'd let you because I hate seeing you worry. But this is important. The money in this account is for you, not for Jason. Not for emergencies, not to be helpful or generous with. For you, for your security, your future, your dreams, whatever those might be. I know you, my love. I know that the minute I'm gone, you'll start giving pieces of yourself away. You'll help Jason with his mortgage. You'll babysit whenever he asks. You'll put everyone else's needs before your own until there's nothing left of the woman I married. Please don't. Jason is a grown man. He needs to figure out his own life, make his own way. And before you defend him, because I know you will, let me tell you what I've been too afraid to say out loud. Our son is selfish. There, I've said it. I love him. He's our boy. But somewhere along the way, he learned that taking is easier than giving. That mom will always bail him out, always sacrifice, always be there no matter how little he gives in return. I've watched him for the past 5 years, Barbara, since he got married, since Dylan was born. I've watched how he uses you, how he calls when he needs something but rarely just to check in. How he accepts your money, your time, your energy without ever asking what it costs you. Do you remember last Christmas? When he forgot to invite you because Brittany's family was in town. You cried that night. You thought I was asleep, but I heard you in the bathroom, trying to muffle the sound. And the next day, when he called to apologize, you told him it was fine, that you understood. It wasn't fine, and you shouldn't have to understand. I wanted to confront him, wanted to tell him that treating your mother like an afterthought was unacceptable, but you asked me not to. You said it would make things awkward, that you didn't want to cause problems between us and Jason, so I didn't, and I've regretted it every day since. This money is my way of trying to fix that. It's my way of making sure that even when I'm gone, you have options. You have freedom. You don't have to say yes to everything because you're afraid of being alone. Promise me something, Barbara. Promise me you'll use this money for yourself. Take that trip to Ireland you've always talked about. Fix up the house. Get your back looked at properly. I know it bothers you more than you admit. Buy yourself nice things without feeling guilty. And if Jason asks for it, and he will eventually say no, I know that sounds harsh, but our son needs to learn that people aren't endless wells of resources, that love isn't measured in money and favors, that his mother is a person, not just a role. I won't be there to protect you from his manipulation. So I'm trying to protect you now, the only way I can. Martin has instructions to make sure you get this account information after you've had time to grieve. The money is in a payable on death account, so it won't go through probate. It's clean, simple, yours alone. I've also left instructions that if anything happens to you, the money goes to Jason, but only then. Only after you've lived your life on your terms. I love you more than I ever had the words to express. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. The kindest, most generous, most beautiful soul I've ever known. Take care of yourself, my darling. Let this be my final gift, the freedom to choose yourself. All my love, forever. Tom. I read the letter 3 times before the tears came. Then they came hard, racking sobs that hurt my healing incision, but I couldn't stop. Martin discreetly left the room, giving me privacy to fall apart. Tom had known. All along, he'd seen what I'd been too blind or too willing to admit. Jason used me, took from me, treated me like a resource rather than a person, and I'd let him. The worst part, Tom's letter was dated 6 months before he died, which meant he'd lived his final months watching me be diminished by our son, watching me shrink myself to fit into the role of helpful mom, and there was nothing he could do except try to protect me from beyond the grave. When Martin returned, he brought fresh tissues and a glass of water. He was a good man, your Tom, Martin said quietly. He was. I wiped my eyes. And he was right about Jason. What do you want to do? I looked at the letter again, at Tom's handwriting, his love bleeding through every word. He'd given me permission to choose myself, had begged me to, in fact. I want the money transferred to my personal account, I said. All of it. And I want documentation of Jason's attempted fraud, in case I need it later. Done. And Barbara? There's something else. He pulled out another document. Tom also set up a small trust fund for Dylan. $5,000 to be given to him on his 18th birthday. It's completely separate from this account. Jason doesn't know about it. Of course, Tom had thought of his grandson. Even in death, he'd been more thoughtful than our son. Can we keep it that way? Secret, I mean, until Dylan's old enough? Absolutely. The fund is administered through our office. Dylan will receive a letter on his 18th birthday explaining the gift and your husband's wishes for how it might be used. We spent the next hour signing paperwork, changing passwords, securing everything. When I finally left Martin's office, I felt different. Lighter somehow, despite the heavy truth I now carried. I knew what I had to do next. It terrified me, but Tom's letter had given me courage I didn't know I possessed. It was time to see Jason face to face. I chose a public place. Carol's suggestion. Don't let him corner you in your own home, she'd said. Meet somewhere you can leave if you need to. So I texted Jason from a new number he wouldn't have blocked. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at p.m. The response came within minutes. Finally, I'll be there. Riverside Cafe was a quiet spot near the park, the kind of place with outdoor seating and enough ambient noise that our conversation wouldn't carry. I arrived early, taking a table in the corner where I could see the entrance. My hands shook as I waited, not from fear, though there was some of that, more from the knowledge that what I was about to do couldn't be undone. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Jason arrived exactly on time, looking polished in a button-down shirt and pressed khakis, his work clothes. He'd come straight from the office, unable or unwilling to take more time out of his day than necessary for his mother. He spotted me and strode over, his face carefully neutral. When he sat down, I noticed the dark circles under his eyes. Good. He should be losing sleep over what he'd done. Mom, he said, I'm glad you agreed to meet. We really need to clear this up. Clear what up exactly? My voice was steadier than I expected. The misunderstanding about Dad's account. Look, I know how it looked, but there's a reasonable explanation. You tried to steal from me. The words hung in the air between us. Jason's jaw tightened. That's not what happened. Then please, I said, pulling out Tom's letter and placing it on the table. Explain it to me. Explain how you hacked my email, found out about an account your father specifically left to me, and then tried to withdraw all of it while I was in the hospital recovering from surgery. His eyes fixed on the letter. I watched the color drain from his face as he recognized his father's handwriting. You weren't supposed to have that, he said quietly. No, I was supposed to have it 6 years ago, but there was a filing error. Lucky for you until now. I leaned forward, ignoring the pull in my abdomen. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That the bank wouldn't verify? I didn't hack anything, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Your email was open on your laptop. I saw the messages from the lawyer. I was curious. So curious that you impersonated me at the bank? I presented as the contingent beneficiary, which I am. Technically, I didn't do anything illegal. Martin Patterson disagrees. So does the bank's fraud department. Jason's hands clenched into fists on the table. You're really going to do this? You're going to treat me like a criminal? What would you call it? I would call it a son trying to secure his family's future. Do you have any idea how much a baby costs? How much daycare is? Brittany and I were trying to plan for Dylan's college fund for the new baby using my money. I interrupted. Money your father left specifically for me. Not for you, not for grandchildren. For me. He was my father too, and he loved you, but he also knew you. I pushed the letter toward him. Read it. Read what he really thought about how you treated me. Jason's hand hovered over the letter, then he jerked it back like it might burn him. I don't need to read anything. I know what kind of son I've been. I've been there for you when? The question came out sharper than I intended. When have you been there for me, Jason? Because I've been trying to remember, and I'm coming up empty. He floundered, searching for examples. You weren't there when your father died. You came to the funeral, stayed for 2 days, then went home because Brittany needed you back. You weren't there for the first anniversary of his death. I spent it alone. You weren't there when I had to put the dog down, when my car broke down, when I had the flu so bad I couldn't get out of bed for a week. You never asked for help. I shouldn't have to ask. My voice cracked. I'm your mother. You should have cared enough to check. The people at the next table glanced over. I lowered my voice, fighting for composure. But you know what you were there for. You were there every time you needed money. Every time you needed a babysitter. Every time you wanted something from me. And I gave it, because that's what I thought mothers were supposed to do. We paid you. You never paid me a cent for watching Dylan. Not once in 3 years. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it. I watched the realization cross his face. He'd actually forgotten that part. Had rewritten history in his mind until he genuinely believed he'd compensated me. We would have, he said finally. If you'd asked, I shouldn't have had to ask to be valued, Jason. That's the point. Your father understood that. That's why he wrote that letter. That's why he made sure I'd have financial security even after he was gone, because he knew you'd treat me like an ATM. That's not fair, isn't it? I pulled out my phone, the one with all his messages still saved. Let me read you something. This is from 3 years ago. Mom, can you lend us $5,000 for the down payment? We'll pay you back in 6 months. Did you ever pay it back? His silence was answer enough. 2 years ago. Mom, our AC broke and we're $3,000 short on the repair. Can you help? Did you pay that back? More silence. Last year. Mom, we're really tight this month. Can you cover Dylan's preschool fees? $600. Did you okay? He slammed his hand on the table. Okay, I get it. I owe you money. Fine, I'll pay it all back. With what? The money you tried to steal from me? His face flushed red. It wasn't stealing. Dad would have wanted me to have it. He would have wanted to help with his grandchildren. Read the letter. I tapped it with my finger. Your father's own words. He knew exactly who you were, Jason. He just loved you enough to hope you'd change. Finally, reluctantly, Jason picked up the letter. I watched his face as he read, saw the emotions flicker across it: denial, anger, hurt, shame. When he finished, his hands were shaking. He really thought that about me? His voice was small, almost childlike. He did. And Jason? I waited until he looked at me. He was right. The tears came then, not from me but from my son. Watching him cry should have broken my heart. A year ago, it would have. I would have reached across the table, comforted him, told him it was okay. But it wasn't okay, and I was tired of pretending. I didn't realize, he whispered. I thought we had a normal relationship, that this was just how families worked. It's how our family worked because I allowed it. Because I never set boundaries, never said no, never demanded better. But Jason, your father's death taught me that life is too short to spend it being used by the people you love. I wasn't using you. You called me selfish for asking for 1 month to recover from surgery. 1 month after 3 years of free childcare. After years of financial help. After a lifetime of putting you first. I felt the anger rising again, hot and clean. And you know what the worst part is? You genuinely believed it. You'd convinced yourself that I was being unreasonable for prioritizing my health over your convenience. He had no answer to that. I'm keeping the money, I said. All of it. It's mine, left to me by a man who loved me enough to protect me even after death. And you're going to pay back every cent you borrowed from me. We'll set up a payment plan. No interest, but I want it in writing. And if I refuse, then Martin Patterson will file fraud charges, and you'll have much bigger problems than paying back your mother. Jason's face hardened. You'd really do that to your own son? You really tried to steal from your own mother while she was in the hospital. So yes, I really would. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Jason stood up. Brittany was right, he said coldly. You've changed. This isn't who you are. No, I agreed. This is who I should have been all along. He left without another word. I watched him walk away and felt relief, not happiness, not satisfaction, but a bone-deep relief that the pretending was finally over. Carol appeared from inside the cafe. She'd been waiting, just in case. She slid into Jason's empty seat and took my hand. You did it, she said. I did it, I repeated, not quite believing it. How do you feel? I thought about that. How did I feel? Sad, certainly. Angry, hurt. But underneath all of that, something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. Free, I said finally. I feel free. But freedom, I would learn, came with a price. And in the weeks that followed, I would discover just how high that price could be. The first 2 weeks after the confrontation were the hardest. Jason didn't call, didn't text. It was as if I'd ceased to exist the moment I'd stopped being useful. Brittany, however, had plenty to say. The messages started the day after the CAF meeting. First, a long text about how disappointed she was in me, how Jason had come home devastated, how I was tearing the family apart over money. When I didn't respond, she called. I let it go to voicemail. Barbara, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this needs to stop. Jason is your son, your only child, and you're punishing him for what? Trying to secure his family's future? We have a baby on the way. Dylan asks about you every day. Is this really how you want things to be? I deleted the voicemail and blocked her number. Carol came by that evening with Chinese takeout and wine I wasn't supposed to drink with my pain medication. We ate it anyway, sitting on my couch, the same couch where I'd spent so many evenings babysitting Dylan while Jason and Brittany enjoyed their date nights. Any regrets? Carol asked. Every minute of every day, I admitted. And none at all. That's the thing about setting boundaries, she said. They feel terrible at first, like you're doing something wrong. But that's just the guilt talking. The guilt. Yes, that was exactly it. Years of conditioning told me I was being a bad mother. That good mothers sacrificed endlessly, forgave everything, put their children first always and forever. The voice in my head sounded like my own mother, who had lived her entire life in service to others and died angry and alone. I didn't want to die angry and alone. But I also didn't want to die used up and resentful. 3 weeks post-confrontation, I got a letter from Martin Patterson. Jason had signed the repayment agreement. $18,000, paid back at $500 per month for the next 3 years. It was in writing, legally binding. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. That night, I pulled out Tom's letter again and read it for what must have been the 20th time. One paragraph stood out, one I'd skimmed over before. Jason is our boy. But somewhere along the way, he learned that taking is easier than giving. That mom will always bail him out, always sacrifice, always be there no matter how little he gives in return. Somewhere along the way. When had it started? I tried to pinpoint the moment when my helpful, affectionate little boy had become a man who could look his mother in the eye and call her selfish for needing surgery recovery time. Maybe it was when he was 8 and had wanted the expensive basketball shoes all his friends had. I'd worked overtime for a month to buy them. He'd been thrilled for exactly 2 days before deciding they weren't cool anymore. Or maybe it was when he was 16 and had wrecked my car. I'd paid the deductible, told insurance it was my fault so his rates wouldn't go up. He'd never even thanked me. Or when he was 23 and had lost his security deposit on his apartment because of damage he'd caused. I'd covered it, telling myself he needed help getting established. Each time, I'd told myself I was being a good mother, supportive, generous, there for my child. But what I'd really been doing was teaching him that his actions had no consequences. That mom would always clean up his messes, always provide a safety net, always put his needs above her own. Tom had seen it. Had tried in his gentle way to warn me, but I hadn't listened, hadn't wanted to see my bright, charming boy as anything less than perfect. Now I was paying the price for that willful blindness. 4 weeks after the confrontation, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Barbara? It's Diane, Jason's mother-in-law. My stomach sank. Hi, Diane. I'm calling because someone needs to. Jason and Brittany are struggling, Barbara. Really struggling. Brittany's pregnancy has been difficult. She's been put on partial bed rest. Jason's working longer hours to compensate, and Dylan is acting out because he misses you. Each word was a carefully placed knife. I recognized the technique. I'd used it myself plenty of times, guilting people into doing what I wanted while pretending to be concerned. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. Are you? Diane's voice sharpened. Because it seems to me like you're perfectly content to let your family fall apart over some money. It's not about the money. Then what is it about? Pride? Stubbornness? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're punishing your son for being human. I took a deep breath, feeling my post-surgical core muscles engage. Even that small movement reminded me of why we were here. Diane, did Jason tell you what happened? The whole story. He told me you're refusing to help with the baby because of some bank account mix-up. Is that what he called it? A mix-up? I laughed, brittle and sharp. He hacked into my personal email, discovered money my late husband left specifically for me, and tried to withdraw it all while I was in the hospital. The bank flagged it as fraud. Silence on the other end. Diane, I love my son, but I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep him warm anymore. If you want to help them, that's your choice. But don't call me trying to guilt me into enabling behavior that should never have been acceptable in the first place. You've become very hard, Barbara. No, I said quietly. I've become honest. There's a difference. I hung up before she could respond. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dylan, my sweet grandson who used to call me Gram and climb into my lap for stories. Was he really asking about me? Or was that just manipulation? At 2 in the morning, I did something I'd been avoiding. I opened Facebook. I rarely used it, but I kept an account to see photos of Dylan. Jason's profile was public enough that I could see recent posts. There were plenty of pictures. Dylan at his new daycare grinning on the playground. Jason and Brittany at a restaurant I recognized as expensive. A photo of a positive pregnancy test with the caption, "Baby number 2 coming soon. Dylan's going to be a big brother." Hundreds of likes, comments filled with congratulations. Not a single mention of me. But it was the post from 2 days ago that made my breath catch. Family is everything, but sometimes family members make choices that hurt. Teaching Dylan that we set boundaries with toxic people, even when it's hard. Love and light to everyone dealing with difficult relatives. Toxic. He'd called me toxic. I stared at that post until my eyes burned. Part of me wanted to comment, to defend myself, to tell his friends and followers the truth. But what would that accomplish? An online war that would only make everything worse? Instead, I closed the app and opened my text messages. Typed out a message to Carol. He called me toxic on Facebook. Her response came immediately. Block him on there too. Don't give him the satisfaction of knowing it hurt. But it did hurt. It hurt more than the surgery, more than the confrontation, more than anything. Because underneath all the anger and betrayal, Jason was still my baby. Still the little boy I'd rocked to sleep, the child I'd protected from every skinned knee and broken heart. Except I hadn't protected him from the most important thing. Becoming someone who could hurt the people who loved him and feel justified doing it. The turning point came 6 weeks post-surgery when I went back to Dr. Patterson for my follow-up appointment. Everything looks good, he said, examining the incision site. You're healing beautifully. You must have followed the rest instructions to the letter. I didn't have much choice, I said. No one to take care of, nowhere to be. He looked up at me, his expression kind. How are you doing? Really? And somehow, that simple question from a doctor I barely knew opened the floodgates. I told him everything. The surgery, the money, Jason's betrayal, the confrontation, the aftermath. He listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. When I finished, he said something unexpected. You know what the worst part of my job is? Watching patients sacrifice their health for people who don't appreciate it. I see it all the time. Women your age, worn down from caretaking, who delay treatment or skip follow-ups because someone else needs them more. And then they end up with complications that could have been prevented. I never thought about it that way. Your body is trying to heal, but healing requires more than just physical rest. It requires emotional space too. You can't repair damage surgical or otherwise while you are still being actively hurt. His words stayed with me long after I left his office. That evening, I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Ireland. Tom and I had always talked about going together. We'd planned it for our 40th anniversary, spent hours looking at photos of the cliffs of Moher, the Ring of Kerry, the colorful buildings of Dublin. Then he'd gotten sick, and the dream had died with him. But Tom's letter had been clear: take that trip to Ireland you've always talked about. So I would. 2 weeks traveling solo through a country I'd only ever seen in pictures. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. When I told Carol, she hugged me so hard my incision twinged. This is exactly what you need. When do you leave? 3 weeks. I wanted to make sure I was fully healed first. Have you told Jason? No, and I'm not going to. The trip was everything I'd hoped for and nothing like I'd expected. Ireland in September was moody and beautiful, all gray skies and green hills and sudden bursts of sunlight that made everything glow. I stayed in small bed and breakfasts, met other solo travelers, ate more scones than was probably healthy. And for the first time in 6 years, maybe in my entire adult life, I wasn't worried about anyone but myself. On my 5th day, hiking along the cliffs of Moher, I stopped at a viewpoint and pulled out my phone. I'd kept it mostly off, checking only once a day for emergencies. No messages from Jason, one from Carol checking in, and a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't listen to it, but something made me press play. Hi, Graham. It's Dylan, his little voice, slightly uncertain. Mommy helped me call you. I miss you a lot. Daddy says you're on a big adventure. Can you bring me back a toy? I love you lots and lots. My eyes filled with tears. The message was clearly orchestrated Brittany's peace offering, or maybe another manipulation. But Dylan's voice was real. His love was real. I saved the voicemail and kept walking. That night, in a pub in Galway, I got talking to another American woman traveling alone. Her name was Patricia, and she was 73 years old. My daughter thinks I'm crazy, she told me over Guinness. Traveling alone at my age. But I spent 50 years putting everyone else first. My husband, my kids, my grandkids. And you know what I realized? They didn't need me to sacrifice everything. They needed me to show them how to live a full life. How did you figure that out? My husband died. Heart attack, very sudden. And I remember standing at his funeral thinking, I don't even know who I am without him. So I decided to find out. She raised her glass. Here's to late-blooming independence. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling something shift inside me. A settling, like pieces finally finding their proper places. When I returned home 2 weeks later, tanned and rested and more myself than I'd been in years, there was a letter waiting for me. The handwriting was Jason's. I made tea before opening it, settling into my favorite chair, the one I'd bought with Tom's money, soft and expensive and unapologetically comfortable. Mom, I don't know if you'll even read this. Diane told me about your conversation. Brittany told me you blocked her. I saw on Facebook that you went to Ireland. I'm not going to apologize for what I did with the bank account. I still think Dad would have wanted me to have that money eventually, but I will apologize for how I did it. Sneaking around was wrong. Trying to access it while you were in the hospital was wrong. Brittany's pregnancy has been hard. She's been on bed rest for 6 weeks now, and I'm exhausted. Dylan's been difficult. My job is demanding, and I kept thinking, if you weren't being so stubborn, you could help us. You could make this easier. But then Dylan asked about you last night. Not because we prompted him, he just randomly said, I miss Graham. When is she coming back? And Brittany said, I don't know, baby. Graham is on an adventure, and he said, I want to go on adventures too when I grow up. It made me think about what kind of example I'm setting for him, about whether I'm teaching him that people who love you should sacrifice everything for you, or whether I'm teaching him something else. I don't know if we can fix this. I don't know if you even want to. But I'm paying you back, like we agreed, and I'm trying to figure out how to be better. That's all I wanted to say. Jason, I read the letter 3 times. It wasn't the apology I'd wanted. There was still defensiveness in it, still justification, but there was also something new. Awareness. A crack in the wall of his certainty. It wasn't enough. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but it was something. I put the letter in a drawer with Tom's letter and went to make dinner. Real dinner, the kind I used to make when Tom was alive. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. As I chopped vegetables, I thought about boundaries, about how they're not walls meant to keep people out, but fences that show them where the door is. Jason could choose to walk through that door with respect and reciprocity, or he could choose to keep pushing against the fence, wondering why it wouldn't budge. Either way, I would be okay, because I'd learned something important during those 6 weeks of recovery, those 2 weeks in Ireland, those quiet evenings in my own company. I was enough, all by myself, not because I was useful, not because I was needed, not because I could provide money or time or service, just because I existed, because I was Barbara Henderson, a woman who had loved deeply and been hurt badly and chosen to heal rather than disappear. 3 months later, on a crisp November morning, my phone rang. Jason's number. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Mom? It's me. A pause. Brittany had the baby. A girl. We named her Emily. Congratulations, I said, and meant it. She's beautiful. Perfect. And Mom, Dylan made something for you at school. A card. It says, I love my Gram with a picture of you and him. Can I send it to you? I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pull. The want to rush over there, to meet the new baby, to scoop Dylan up and tell him I'd missed him too. But I'd learned to sit with those feelings instead of acting on them immediately. Yes, I said finally. You can send it. And maybe when things settle down, we could talk. Really talk? Maybe, I said. When you're ready to hear what I have to say. I think I might be. Finally. After we hung up, I sat with the news. A granddaughter, Emily. Part of me ached to meet her, to hold her, to be the grandmother I'd been to Dylan. But I wouldn't go running back just because there was a new baby. Wouldn't reset the boundaries I'd worked so hard to build. If Jason wanted me in his children's lives, he would have to earn that privilege. Would have to show me through sustained action that he understood what he'd done wrong and was committed to doing better. Words were easy. Apologies came cheap when someone wanted something. But change? Real change? That took time, effort, consistency. I would wait. And while I waited, I would keep living my life. The life Tom had wanted for me. The life I'd finally found the courage to claim. That evening, Carol came over with champagne. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. To boundaries, I countered. To knowing your worth. We clinked glasses and I felt it again, that sense of rightness. Of being exactly where I was supposed to be. Not because everything was perfect. Not because my relationship with Jason was healed. Not because the hurt had disappeared. But because I'd chosen myself. Finally, after 58 years, I'd chosen myself. And that, I was learning, was enough. Spring came to my little house with its fixed dishwasher and newly painted kitchen. Tom's money had gone to good things: the Ireland trip, necessary home repairs, a nest egg for emergencies, and a small investment account that was actually growing. Jason and I were in what Carol called supervised contact. We'd had 3 family therapy sessions, awkward and painful, where a professional helped us navigate the wreckage of our relationship. He was trying. I could see that. But trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. I'd met Emily exactly once, in a neutral location, Carol's house, with clear time boundaries. She was beautiful, perfect, and I'd held her for exactly 20 minutes before handing her back and going home. The old Barbara would have stayed all day, would have offered to babysit, would have made herself indispensable. The new Barbara kissed her granddaughter's forehead and left while I still wanted to stay. Dylan and I video called once a week, on my terms at times that worked for my schedule. He told me about kindergarten, his new sister, his friends. I told him about my garden, my book club, the pottery class I'd started taking. We were finding our way back to each other slowly, carefully. Brittany still kept her distance, and I was fine with that. Some relationships couldn't be repaired, and trying to force them only caused more damage. This morning, I got an email from Martin Patterson. The paperwork for Tom's trust fund to Dylan had been completed. On his 18th birthday, my grandson would receive $5,000 and a letter from the grandfather he'd never known. I smiled, imagining Dylan at 18, reading Tom's words. Maybe by then, he'd understand what it meant to have someone love you enough to protect your future. Maybe by then, Jason would have learned to do the same. Or maybe not. Either way, I'd done my part. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol. Lunch today? That new place by the farmer's market. I looked at my calendar, completely clear, completely mine. Sounds perfect, I typed back. See you at noon. As I got ready, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me had gray hair I'd stopped dyeing, laugh lines I'd earned, and eyes that held both sorrow and strength. She looked like someone who'd survived something. More importantly, she looked like someone who'd chosen to thrive anyway. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, lying in that hospital bed, absorbing her son's cruel words and wondering if she really was selfish for needing to heal. If I could go back and tell her anything, it would be this: you're not selfish for having needs. You're not cruel for having boundaries. You're not a bad mother for refusing to be used. You're just finally, beautifully, bravely human, and that's more than enough.